Welcome to everyone. This is I think, a really fun way to start the Memorial Day weekend because it's just such an inspirational. First of all, it's a beautiful book. If you can see from the cover that the visual here is just so inspiring, and it's a book that really, I think, sets the tone for the summer. It's a book that takes us all the way through the year, but there's no better place to start a book like this than at the beginning of the summer. And Christopher earlier said, he's so happy to be here with us. And the minute we're done, he's going to go out and start planting in his garden again. And so to that point, and welcome to Christopher and to Kate. This is Christopher's first book, which is really hard to believe because you've been at this a long time. And this is such a it's such a sophisticated book. You'd think maybe you had a few more before that just to kind of try it out. But as many of you know, he's a renowned ceramicist. He's also sort of the ultimate weekend farmer, not gentleman farmer, because he's very serious about it. So he's a weekend farmer, and he is on everybody's, the chic A-list, interior lists. For every design magazine. He's kind of a go-to for lamps and for tableware and other ceramics. And I can vouch for this personally, that his work is just so beautiful and colorful and just so sophisticated. His work has been in the White House. He's been featured in AD, the Wall Street Journal, and to the point of loving gardens, he sits on the board of the Garden Conservancy and also the Lenox Hill Neighborhood House. And Kate is a dear friend of the bookstores, and she is a dear friend of Christopher's, which you will see in the conversation to follow. She opened her own really beautiful, engaging, also sophisticated, elegant design store in New York called KRB. In 2014, and it offers a curated selection of objects, antiques, vintage furniture, home accessories, including a whole range of Christopher's, and she really combines classical decor with modern living and lots of color, which is near and dear to her heart and all of ours. So this again, will be a wonderful conversation, a wonderful, you'll see their relationship, and I think it's just a great way and I hope it's sunny where everyone is, to kind of launch the weekend and get ready for a drink when this is over. So with that, I'll turn it over, I guess, to Christopher to take it away.
Thank you. I appreciate it very much. Yeah, when we were doing this book with Rizzoli, they wanted to work gentleman farmer into the title of it, and I really resisted that because Kate and everybody else, and anybody who follows me on Instagram, I'm not so much of a gentleman farmer. I like to go out there and dig in the dirt myself. My lawn man looked at me one day when I was digging and filthy dirty. He goes, "You'd make a hell of a hired hand."
Listen, we always joke at the store that Christopher Spitzmiller has more hours in the day than the rest of us, because we're always in awe of all that Chris does, and it's very inspiring.
I sleep. I get 7 or 8 hours of sleep every night. I just make the most of any day that I can. And the way that I do that is if I see something in front of me, I do it, because the mental tax of thinking about it is too high for me to pay. I'd rather just get it done in the moment. There's some things I can't get done that have to wait, but largely if it's in front of me, that thing is done. Like, it's just like, let's get it done, move on to the next thing. So
it's what all the organized people in my life say you should do. So it's good to hear that you actually do it.
So we'll start at the beginning. So I did ceramics from when I was a wee kid and like preschool kind of age. And I like the idea of being able to give something to your parents or to a friend that they could use it and it would have some usable part of somebody's life. And so all throughout school, whenever ceramics was available to me, I took it, and I graduated. And while I was at boarding school, I became what was called a ceramics major, which is a misnomer because it only meant that you got a grade in the class. It didn't need it. But of course, when I told my mother I was going to be a ceramic major, she pulled the car over to the side of the road and was like, honey, I think you need to find something to do that's a little more lucrative than this, you know. So I thought that I would be like a lawyer or a, you know, banker like everybody else in my family. I would do this on the side, like everybody else, like I garden now. So I graduated, I moved to Washington, D.C., and I had no idea what I was going to do. And I was an intern at the White House, and then I got a job with a PR firm. And then you got the summers off when you work for the PR firm. So I got together a show of work and I had it at a friend's store in Washington. And then Mac Hope was opening Meacock's Gardens, which you all know out there in the Hamptons. And there was this prefab shed that I work from. And he said, why don't you come out and be potter in residence? So I loaded up my car and my kiln and drove out there. And every piece that summer broke like as soon as it came out of the kiln or right after. But I say to people, like, if you're going to be an artist, like they said to me at Rhode Island School of Design, they're like, if there's anything else you can do, you should probably do it. But, you know, for this, I needed to do it. I needed to enrich people's lives. And I saw people out there like Simon Pierce and the Mackenzie Childs, and they were doing it and they seemed to be making a living at it. So I figured, why not do it? So at the end of that summer, I met Richard Keith Langham, who has Jackie O's decorator for the last 10 years of her life. And then this was Jackie O's grandparents' house on Lily Pond Lane. And Keith happened to be decorating it. And he drew out a sketch of the lamp that's behind the sofa there and said, you're going to make this and it's going to be here in like 2 weeks. And back then I just made Keith the vase and he had it electrified. So I learned to teach myself all the different things that needed to be done. This is my very first studio in Washington, D.C. It was a subterranean studio in an old schoolhouse across the street from Montrose Park and down the road from Dunbarton Oaks.
Chris, I love the colors of the glazes you have there. So you've always loved a deep, rich glaze.
Yeah, and you know, some of them we still do. Those double gourds are in amber, which is what we still make. That red one in the front is no longer available. But you know, like things that I made back then, we've changed a little bit. But you can see a wheel, a lathe. So I learned how to turn the bases and water gild them and do all of that. And I had like 6 people working for me in that studio and kept taking over more and more space. And I then decided I needed to move up to New York. So I took a deep breath and I moved and I reached out. Well, back when I was in Washington, I would reached out to decorators whose work I liked, like Albert Hadley here. And I would send packages of information to them and they would call and write. And for every 10, we would get like 7 responses. And Albert said, like, you know, I want some of these red lamps. Will you do this? And will you do that? And you know, we finally met up and became friends and were really, really close for a lot of years. And when he died, David Kleinberg said of Albert, he said, for a man who didn't have any kids of his own, he certainly raised an awful lot of us. And I feel really warm inside to have been one of the kids that he got behind, because he made it his mission to find people who were off the beaten path and to give them work and to encourage them to do things, much the way I think I'm doing, and I think Kate is doing in her store. She's, you know, not always relying on like the normal everyday people. She's finding people off the beaten path, which is a really great thing. So this is my father, who is a hell of a gardener, like I am. He was more of a vegetable gardener and had this big, vast vegetable patch that my older brother and sister referred to as the work camp, and they hated it. My father would tie a little sand pail around my neck, and my job was to pick peas and to put the peas in the thing. And of course, I would eat more peas than would ever go into my bucket. And you can still hear my mother, "You're going to make yourself sick. You're going to make yourself sick." But my father had a hugely hard work ethic, and that's one of the things that I do attribute to him, was having that. And that camel hair coat that's over the back has been gifted to Ashley's son, little Andrew, so he'll be wearing that soon. So
sweet.
And then you have my mom and Bunny Williams here, who are both big influences on me. My mom is, she's a little bit of a gardener, but she's more of a Martha Stewart type in entertaining. You know, she always was having dinner parties, and I was buying books on how to fold napkins and say, Mom, will you get this for me? And she'd get this and I'd fold all the napkins for her dinner party. Yet when I came out of the closet, she was surprised that I was gay. And I was like, no, the writing was there on the wall. And then Bunny Williams and John Roselli, who have become sort of taken over the role of Albert in my life and have become my sort of like godparents. And I see them a lot and encourage me. This is the first studio that I had in New York. It was on 37th Street. We're on 35th Street now, in an article that was done in Departures magazines. And I like to say that I do jewelry for people's living room or bedroom or wherever they decide they put my lamps. And this sort of sums up that sort of jewelry effect in it. So.
All of your lamps are forever pieces, Chris. I mean, I think that everyone who buys one of your lamps from us, it's something that they've looked at, they've longed for, and they'll have forever. They're
even me, I have the same ones. I have the same bedside table lamps and the same living room lamps that I've had forever. I'll bring in some new things from time to time. Like I brought in a little tall Hadley lamp and I put it near my dining room table that I use as a desk so that I have some better reading lamps. But I'm like, they're great. I don't need any reason to change it. So when I'm working, I start on the potter's wheel and I make 6 or 8 shapes that I like. And then of the 6 or 8, I pick out the one that's like the best one. And we make a mold out of it and produce the shapes out of molds and then put 2 and 3 coats of glaze on them to get those rich, vibrant colors. And then they're sort of wired up and appear out there in the world. This is Alex Papagristides' library. The lamps previously resided in his former apartment in his bedroom, and he moved these into his library, and he got some different lamps of mine for his bedroom, and his living room has a pair. Alex is a great client because he's like a locust. Kate will attest to this. He sort of devours stuff when he comes in your shop, and
it's fabulous.
Just up here at the farm yesterday. So, and then this is my friend Ashley Whitaker and some of our Patricia lamps, and they're in sort of like a camel-y kind of warm beigey color and Gracie wallpaper. And then this is the Wilbur and Hillary Ross's guest house in Palm Beach. And Mario Boada, who is a good friend of mine for a lot of years, did this house for them. Bunny had done the big house and Mario did the guest house, which is not such a little guest house to do. But when they were working on replacing the windows in the big house, Hillary and Wilbur stayed in this bedroom. That wallpaper is some of my favorite there. So this is my very fashion-forward days of Washington, D.C.
What a tie, Chris.
The Nicole Miller tie that at the moment we thought was like the thing, you know. So I was in the same intern class that Monica Lewinsky was in. There's that picture. We were all up there. I did not know Monica. I worked in the East Wing. She worked in the West Wing. I would say to people, I wish we were friends because I would have kept that whole thing quiet anyway. But it was pretty great to be able to work there. The people who take care of that house are amazing. Everything about it was great. I worked in the social office, so we gathered people's social security number and their date of birth because you can't have any outstanding, you know, criminal activity or
no parking tickets
taxes if you're going to go to the White House. So we do all that. What I didn't know when I was there, when I was working for the Clintons, is when they would leave the White House, I would make lots of things for their house in Washington and their house in Chappaqua. And then Laura Bush purchased on her own from a store in Washington a pair of my lamps and put them in the upstairs of the White House. So we had this sort of little White House thing going. So Michael Smith was then named the White House decorator, and I got out a pen and paper and I wrote him a letter and I said I wanted to donate some lamps, and he said absolutely. And he showed up to my studio in the depth of the recession and he showed me this picture of, well, it wasn't this picture, but it was an architectural rendering of the room with the lamps at the end of the Oval Office, which wasn't the place that I was thinking they were going to go at the White House. You know, I don't know where they were going to end up, but I was really bowled over by this. And when it happened, Claire Potter said about it, you should pretty much retire now because it's gotten as big as it's going to get. And for all those years, we were on the cover of the New York Times or Wall Street Journal pretty much once a week. It was pretty great.
It's pretty fabulous.
Yeah, and then this is Michael's, the living room of the family White House upstairs, and same lamps in a different color. You can see how they changed so much. These were the same ones I showed in Ashley's slide. Ashley's were beige. The last ones were Prussian blue. These ones are olive green. You can see how the color just changes them. This is a regular sort of like, you know, weekend supper at the farm. And these are my marble dishes that we went back to start making dishes again about, maybe it was 8 years ago. And we do them in these swirl colors. We do them in flowers that I grow. We do a dahlia set, a sweet pea set, a peony set. These ones are made with the old sort of like technique of like slipware, where the white is put on the plate and we move it around with the color on it and get the right amount of motion, and then stop the motion and put clear on it and fire it. So this is a part about the house. There's a before and after pictures. So this is how I found the house in October of 2005. It was looking like something out of a Wyeth painting, and you could imagine Christina pulling herself up in front and then up those stairs, and there were honeybees in the walls of it. It didn't look like people were living there, but people were living there. And it spoke to me. There was something about it. It was what I could afford at the time and what I wanted, and you know, I wanted to make my own thing with it, so I bought it, and I sort of slowly worked on it. And it was 6 years of really expensive renovation work, of new chimneys and new heating systems and windows and reconfiguring it and bathrooms. And the recession came along in the middle of it, and I had to stop working on everything and say, okay, we're going to take a break. And then during all this time, Margaret Russell, who is at AD, would call me and say, I want to run your house. And I say, okay, if you want to shoot the new chimneys or the new heating system, you're welcome to come, but there's nothing going on inside of here. So we finally got it together with the help of Harry Heisman. I decorated the inside of it, and AD came and photographed it. And what's cropped out of this picture is I had begun the garden, but there was an old garage over there that looked like a shack. It had like no door on it or anything. And the AD photographer was like, well, what about that shack over there? And I'm like, you cropped that building out. It took everything in my pocket to get us here today. We'll get a perfectly good picture. And this is the picture that they ran. So back to what it was like before. It was like my own little personal gray gardens. They hadn't cleaned the gutters in years, and the front sill of the house had rotted out, and raccoons could have.
You have vision, Chris. I mean, I think
yeah,
we can say that.
And guts. And
yes,
I wrote to my friend Penny Madison, who's one of my fairy godmothers, and sent her these pictures, and she said, well, it's a good thing you're young. You know, but you could just see how the big sheets of glass were there, and this is how I changed it. And it wasn't any magic wand. I did it as I could afford to do it, and I got it all done. I painted it and did that heating and air conditioning system first, and the shutters and the sort of porticos were some of the last things that I did to the house. And you can see the geese there, who are sort of the new additions to it. This is my first kitchen, which is where I'm sitting right now. The view that you can see was all exposed brick back there, and a lot of linoleum, and you know, it was fine, and the kitchen worked, and I cooked out of there for years and years. It was one of the last things that I did. But here's the view from the upstairs of it. The oldest part of the house is the kitchen. The kitchen dates from the late 1700s, and the family lived in here and slept upstairs, and the fireplace heated the whole thing. And as the farmers did better, they added on the front part of the house. And I'm making, in this picture, a rhubarb pie. Rhubarb is in season right now, so I need to start making those pies, which is a recipe that I got from John Roselli and have varied. Oh. This is the blank slate that was my first garden. The farm was a dairy farm for a lot of years, and then it was a horse farm. So there were these big, vast fields of just lawn everywhere. And I made a sketch of what the garden was going to look like, and worked with some friends who knew what they were doing. And you can see the posts inside of the hedge that was planted was where the dovecote was going to eventually be. We dug the beds in and put those hornbeam in, and they were
was the dovecote a part of the plan from the beginning?
Very beginning, it was a part of the plan, and that's the shack of the garage. It looks pretty good in this picture, but from the other side, there was no door on it to close there. It was always part of it, but you know, like I could afford to do the garden, and there was a man in Virginia who bought a really grand house, and his wife said to him, you need to get the house done before you do the outside. So I had a little bit of garden space up near where my chickens are now, and I planted vegetables, and then I planted dahlias, and I planted sweet peas, and I grew things up there, but I never had a big thing. And I wanted to have my house done before I did that. So I stuck to the plan, and this was us putting the beds in and laying it all out. And it's hard to believe that like this, and then the big pile of manure in the front, which I in the beginning would buy from farmers. That's all cow manure then that we till into the earth, because I'm a firm believer that the best fertilizer you can get your hand on is good soil. And to improve your soil every year, we spread composted chicken manure on it, we till it up, we do this and that, and then the field up there is where the pool is now. This is tulip season, which just wrapped up here. So I plant 2,000 or 3,000 tulip bulbs in those beds every year. And then alongside the fences or under the fences, I plant sweet peas, so that in the end of June and beginning of July, sweet peas sing along those fences, and then dahlias take over their place in the fall. And we dig out the tulips, and we plant zinnias and snapdragons and all sorts of different things in there, so that there's always something blooming. And then that's my new garage that should be a greenhouse, but it's a garage, and we make it into a greenhouse in the winter with a lot of grow lights in there. And then this is peony season, which is
gorgeous,
just about to happen. Till it tablecloth. And
how many types of peonies do you grow, Chris?
There are 450 peony bushes here, or plants here, and then there are at least 3 of every variety. So I have a lot of them, which is good, because there's one called Early Bird that starts blooming in mid-May, and then the tree peonies start, and then the rest of them start. So we've had a little bit of peonies, but it's that first week in June up here for us is when they really come on. So this is in the book, there is the name for each of these peonies, and in the back of the book is a resource that I purchased them from. I like these open form peonies that are called single or anemone form peonies in some case. The one in the upper corner is a tree peony, and then the one in the lower corner is an Itoa peony, and all the rest of them are herbaceous ones. So I don't know, I'm kind of manic in my my planting and purchasing, and I just tend to buy colors that I like, and they sort of work together. You know what I mean? Like I just, you know,
you make a statement. You buy it, you get enough going and growing to make it a visual statement, and it's really beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
You'll get to enjoy it.
So this is the garden when it was photographed by AD, which I had not imagined, because we put it in the same year that this picture was taken. And you can see without the dovecote there, it was fine, and the hornbeam began to fill in. And one year for Christmas, I asked Santa Claus, I said, please, I've been a good boy. If I could just have my hornbeam fill in, I'd be happy. But there's an adage in gardening, and it applies to a lot of life, that the first year it sleeps, the second year it creeps, and the third year it leaps. And I have absolutely become a believer in that, and you can see it. So then this is what it's like with the dovecote in it, which looks like it had always been there. And the windows were purchased on the side of the road. I think that they had come out of a schoolhouse. Whenever I build a new building around here, I buy old elements to work them in, so that the building doesn't look like it's brand spanking new, because I want to avoid that. I want it all to look like it's always been here. And I think pretty much I've been able to accomplish it. So this is the end of the season. This is late September or maybe early October, and the dahlias have taken over those fences and have come 6 to 8 feet tall, and we cut from there and bring them in the house. And it's just a joy to be around, and you can see how big the zinnias have gotten. This is my friend Martha Stewart. Every year we load into the car and go to the Congressional Poultry Show in it's in Massachusetts, Springfield, Massachusetts is where it is, and we argue over who's going to get this chicken and who's going to get that chicken. And I come home with 2 chickens, and she comes home with like 15 and tells all of her friends that I got the best ones. So, you know, Martha and I have a lot in common with the birds and the gardening and everything. And there's a lot of her influence everywhere in what I do. So every year I show my chickens at the Dutchess County Fair, and there's a movie that if any of you haven't seen out there called The Chicken People, which is a part of Amazon Prime, and chronicles like the movie Best in Show, but instead of it being fictional people, they are real people.
Oh
And it
my.
shows you how to prepare and get your birds ready for showing. And this is me getting ready with one of my Buff Orpingtons, just like you would wash your dog for.
This is my favorite. And I always show the girls whenever you wash the chickens, and they think it's just the wildest thing.
And the chickens don't mind it. At the beginning, they're not so thrilled, but after they get under that warm water, they're kind of like, this isn't so bad, you know. Just sort of go with it.
Kind of warmer than a dust bath.
Yeah, and then another Martha influence is the peacocks. So I have one India blue one called Anthony, and then the blacky one is a bronze peacock, which is really rare that we're trying to breed this year. And then my pool. So when Albert Hadley died, he gave me a bunch of scrapbooks that he had compiled, and the upper picture was in the scrapbook. And I didn't, if you read the thing, it says, you know, obelisks of clipped hemlock, birds, figures, but it doesn't say where it is, you know. And so I learned through Instagram, where you can figure out anything, that the pool existed in Maryland, and it's at Ladue Gardens. And to me, the black and white picture was even more powerful because it looked like a pond, and I like to swim in natural bodies of water. And so I said to myself, when you're ready to build a pool, you're going to do this oval shaped pool, and it's going to look kind of like this. So I got to go down to Ladue, and I measured their pool down there, and there's one here at Weathersfield House. It's an oval one too. And I like to swim in natural bodies of water, but my friends turn their noses up at these natural bodies of water. And they're like, I'm not going in there. Like today I was showing somebody my pond, and they're like, but are there leeches in there? And I'm like, not that I've discovered in all the years that I've been here. So we made a plan up with my architect, Jonathan Parison, and there's the oval pool in there, and it's surrounded by hornbeam, and there's beds inside of it. And as you go in the gates, there are beds of the peonies and lilies on either side, flanked by each other and mirrored again. And peonies and lilies are inherently good bed mates because the peonies flower early and give you a show now, and then the lilies flower in June, July, and August. So you have pretty much an endless thing. And the lilies like hot tops and cold feet, so the peonies provide nice shade for them. And then in the two borders that go on either side of the pool house, I have roses in there, and across from the pool I've got a row of dahlias going on. And so this was the pool in process, and you can see from the corner of the garage there that oval shaped window just on the other side of the chimney, and that's an old window that I got for in that space. I've already purchased some Gothic windows and old carriage house doors for my barn renovation that I got going now. But
that's exciting.
Yeah, so these, you can see the beds in formation. That space up there was fairly flat and level because that had been the riding ring for the family that was here before. So on Instagram as well, I follow Paige Dickey, who's one of my really good friends, and she posted a picture of this building, which is at Arundel Castle, and it's done by these people called the Bannermans. That they do these hornclad buildings, and they've done them there, they've done them at Highgrove, and they've done them in Houghton. And I'm like, this is what I need on my pool house. I need some horns. So this is the pool house completed. So the pool house is one part the Bannermans, one part the Temple of Pan at Austerley, and then the porch, big portico, is one part Bunny Williams. So this is, I love spending time up there. The geese love spending time up there. My friends love it up there. So
it's pretty gorgeous and glorious. It's got quite the view.
Yeah, all the antlers came from a local farm. They were all from what are called fallow deer, and all antlers. Well, most all you know, these animals, they shed their antlers in the winter and grow new ones in the spring. So you walk the fields in the spring, and they collected all these, and I purchased them. And then the ones on the top are either elk or axe antlers, and those I bought from different various sources. So birds like making their nests up in there now. So it's a whole thing. And then these are the geese. So in the beginning of COVID, Martha gave me 8 eggs of geese, and I really didn't want geese, but when Martha Stewart gives you something, you say yes and you smile. Thank you very much. And I put the eggs in my incubator, and they hatched. And we have goose Joan Rivers on the right, and you can see why we call her Joan Rivers is she has a little bit of bad eye work going on. And, the other one is Goose Pat Altschul, there, and they've have lots of offspring. There's in the other room.
They have more friends now, don't they?
They have more friends.
Like 6 of them.
There's 4 big ones, and then we're going to keep 3 of the smaller ones, and some of the other ones are finding homes all the time. And then this is the garden from the pool house, and you can see all of those lilies, and imagine underneath those lilies where the peony leaves are. And then in the spring, Kate just saw that there's camassia planted all around there. And then
Gorgeous.
in the late summer, it turns into Russian sage, and there's 2 bamboo stakes in the back of it. And that was to house tomatoes, because I didn't have any enclosed area to grow tomatoes. So I planted them up there, much to my friend Memory Lewis's huge dismay. Memory was like, that garden is far too fancy to plant tomatoes in. And I'm like, it's a spot to grow tomatoes. We're going to grow tomatoes. And they've been moved. So now Memory can get a good night's sleep knowing that the tomatoes are in their proper place and not in that fancy garden up there. Oh. So along the way, my contractor convinced me into re-insulating the house, which was not part of my plan from the beginning, which involved taking out all of the sheetrock and all of the walls. And I literally freaked out at this moment. I called my friend Claire Potter and I said, what have I done? You know, I mean, it was a house and it's not a house anymore. It's like this skeletal thing. And she said into the phone that day, she said, listen, when all those contractors, which will run late, leave your life and are gone, you won't think of any of this. And it's like giving birth to a baby, and all you will do is enjoy it. And I have to say, Claire was incredibly right, because that's been the case for the last, 8 years that it's been all done for. And we've just been enjoying it and adding to it. So this is the downstairs of the space that we were looking at. You can see the carved space, the carved stairway, and or the curved stairway, and how it's done. And the gold dog head was from Mario Botta, and Harry helped me find that mirror at an antique place in Hudson. So one of the few family pieces I have in the house is that Sheridan card table there that came out of our house on Cape Cod. Oh, this was what we did to rework it. There was a little book room at the end of the dining room, which made no sense at all. And the dining room dead ended out of the kitchen. So we got rid of that. Jonathan showed me how we could get rid of that, create a bathroom in the space underneath the stairs, which was open to the library, and move the bathroom to another location, and sort of reconfigured it to make it sort of work better for today's living. And the 3rd floor of the house was just one long big room that was painted bubblegum pink, and was like a big bunk room that had no heat up there, and industrial carpeting. And we made these big triangular windows to go in there. And this is putting those in, and this is what it's like all finished. This is the firecracker room. So all those wallpapers are Albert Hadley's wallpapers that are available through Xena Studios. And the bed was Albert's bed. And all of those periodicals were all the different magazines that he was published in over the years. And then this is a transit and progression inside. So this picture was taken around the time that AD was here, and what it looked like then, and then what it looked like now. So when Mario Botta died, I bought a whole wall of spaniels from his estate, and I put them up there and put the blue bows up. And my ancestors are on one side, and Fanny, my Cavalier ancestors, are on the other wall. And you can see that Fanny comes from a far grander lineage of people than I come from, So, and then Lion is the Labrador Retriever on the other side. This is my dining room. And when I bought the house, I had really humble ambitions to create a very simple atmosphere that involved ticking and maybe some few sheet paint colors here and there. And it's going to be simple, simple, simple. And, it turned into this. And it turned into this by chance.
But it's really fabulous.
Turned into this. So my mom had a really good friend in my hometown called East Aurora that Ellen Biddle Shipman had done a house in the 1930s for that had been built. And she did the garden, and she had this wallpaper installed in the dining room of this house. And the house was sold in the 1980s, and the wallpaper was steamed off the wall and existed in my mom's friend's basement for some 20 years. And my mom was having these conversations with antique dealers trying to find homes for this paper. And nobody was interested. And quite frankly, I wasn't interested because I was going to have this simple house that didn't really have anything elaborate going on. And I said to my mom, send me a piece of this wallpaper and I'll see if I can find a home for it. Because I know every decorator there pretty much is. And the birds on it spoke to me. And I said, I've got to use this myself. And we made it work in that room. And this is the same marble that we saw at the beginning, but this is in brown. And then I got to go to Chatsworth a lot of years later, and the same birds are on the walls of the Chatsworth bedrooms as they are. These were the first brown birds that came my way. Their wallpaper's in a lot better shape than mine because I bet it hasn't been steamed off of their walls and stored in any basement for any period of time. But it shows that it is the real 18th century stuff. So this is the garden all sort of grown in winter. The hornbeam that I use back there is European hornbeam, which holds its leaves all winter, which gives a nice windbreak, home for birds, and like just wall that creates there. And we take Christmas very seriously and do a lot of garlands every year. And this is what it's like in the winter. And then my current project is my cow barn that's falling down, as you can see. Gets a little worse over here. The end part had a manure drop in it, and the end part was just sort of like falling down. And so we got a permit out to take down the end part. And I wanted to get rid of the barn completely. And the highway department, which is across the street from me, was going to take all the cement block. And we got a new highway superintendent, and he doesn't want any of the blocks, so we have to work with it. So we're going to keep what's there and put a new roof on it. We're going to build a big center double high portico that will come in the center of it, that when you open up the doors there and the doors on the other side, you'll see all the way through it. The right side is going to be the chicken wing, meaning it's going to be up for all chickens. And then the left is going to be for storage of all the stuff that we have around here. And then eventually there'll be a greenhouse attached to the storage part of it and come out. So you can see the Gothic windows drawn in, and I bought 2 sets of doors so far, and it'll all be sort of clad in like a hardy board and stuff. And I'm excited about this project.
What color is it going to be, Chris?
No, I wanted it to be black, but to get that hardy board kind of stuff to work, you kind of need to make it white. So I think we'll do it white and maybe some accents of dark colors in places. So the roof will be the dark color that I have on the garage currently. And it's going to be a lot lower than the building that's up there. You know, the building is sited a good 10 to 15 feet higher than my house. And, you know, from the upstairs of it, I'll be able to see over this and see into the fields behind. So I'm looking forward to this project. This is the new exciting thing that's happened. Anthony, my fiance, has opened up a store in Millbrook called Orangery that Kate got to visit, and
totally divine and fabulous.
A little bit of everything going on in there. He prefaced opening it. He goes, I want to sell all this stuff that Chris goes to 28th Street to buy, like branches and anemones and orchids, and you can't get any of that stuff up here. So there's a creel and gow in one side of the building, and then Anthony's in the other part of it. And this is a look at the greenhouse inside and the different things that we're growing in there. So
there's so many treasures there, and so many fun plants and special things. I'm kind of obsessed with the dwarf morning glory topiary I bought. It's really, I'm going to keep it alive. That's my goal.
That little blue one, did you buy the little blue one?
Yes, I couldn't resist with like the true blue flowers.
I have some of those. They're really, really pretty.
I mean, there's something about true blue flower. Oh, look at that picture. Isn't that?
So this is a picture that's in the end papers in the book. And you can see the barn when it was all there, and what we're, and the pool sort of shortly after it was built, and get a good sort of perspective of the whole thing. The fence line is my property line, and the brook that you see along here is where the farm gets its name from. And the building next to my house is the Grange Hall, where we make all the pottery and plates. And all of that is 5.5 acres. And it's plenty of enough acres for me. I'm really quite happy with it. One day, Martha asked me what Kubotas I had there, and I proudly looked at her. I have 3 wheelbarrows, and recently somebody asked if we had a golf cart to drive people around, and I said no, but they can use the wheelbarrows, and we can put the people in the wheelbarrows and move them around. I like getting the exercise of doing it, and you know, so it's all pretty good. So I'm ready for some questions now. That's pretty much all my spiel. So shoot away.
It is as beautiful as it looks in the pictures, Chris.
Thank
you
you.
know, and it's just always such a treat to go there. And you are always so generous with your knowledge. I always appreciate that.
Yeah, that's why I wrote the book. I wrote the book to encourage people to do some of the things that I've done, to renovate, to cook, to entertain. I had people in the house when I had that bad, crappy kitchen, and I cooked Thanksgiving dinner from it. And we sat down in the dining room that I had then and ate, and I entertained all along. So it's like, don't let things hold you back.
Totally.
The message is just go forward and just do it. So.
Well, one of the things you always tell me when I start texting you mad questions about like gardening or this or that, or have I killed this or killed that, you should say, well, you give it a try. And when I was planting something, it sounds so silly, but you told me, you know, you can move it if you don't like where you plant it. And it sounds ridiculous, but that had never occurred to me. I just thought I'd plant it and it was there forever if it survived.
Yeah, I mean, you want to pick the time of year that's right to move it, but you can totally move everything, you know, so.
Okay, I've got some questions from our participants here. Thank you so much. I have a personal question, just looking at, it looks like more than 5.5 acres for sure, but do you have help? I mean, you've got to have some help managing this.
Are you available? What's your rate? When can you start? You're not above cleaning a chicken coop, I hope. Because
I'm not, and I know good help is hard to find, but it just seems like a tremendous amount of work.
We have 2 professional women gardeners that work for 6 hours together 1 day a week. And then when we need it, there's more watering that happens. And then on the weekends, I have some guys that do clean out the chicken coops and plant heavier stuff. And we just took all the tulip bulbs out of the ground. And last year we planted 13,000 bulbs all in all, and they helped a lot with that. But like after I get off the phone, I'm going to go out there and plant some sweet peas because the rabbit ate the seeds that I planted. And I took some sweet pea starts home from Anthony's store, and I'm going to put those in the garden. And, you just learn to make it all sort of work. And it's a lot, and it's a big responsibility. And when I went back to the city, the people in the Grange Hall took care of the chickens and fed them and did that kind of stuff. And the gardeners came more watering things. But now that we're up here most of the time, I really enjoy doing it, and I want to build that greenhouse. But I know the moment that we do the greenhouse is the moment that we're probably going to have a full-time person here. Mm-hmm. And it kind of scares me because it's like, I can afford it. It's just like, I don't want to let go of the responsibility. It keeps me so occupied and so interested. And I do have a lot of people who work for me in the city and in the pottery up here. And that does afford me the time to be the gardener that I am and to take care of the birds and to be able to do all that. So the short, and there's somebody who cuts the grass. If you totaled it all up now, there's a full-time person's wages out there, maybe a little bit more, but it's different people who are doing it all to do it. So
yeah, I think it's amazing. It's amazing. Did you spend the whole pandemic at the farm, or
as much of the pandemic as we did? Like the first 3 months we were up here solid, and then I started to go into the city, and Anthony never went into the city. He worked from the end of the dining room and did lots of Zoom calls. He's the landscape architect, and he then was working on large city parks and public spaces, and he did all of that. And the opportunity to open the store came along, and he came from a slightly bigger town than Millbrook is, but he never envisioned himself ending up in some place like this. But he loves it, and he never leaves, and he's quite happy with it. But now I get to spend 4 nights a week here, and then the other nights in the city, which is really, really nice, or 5 nights up here, and then 2 nights in New York is what I'm doing. So it's a really good schedule. It's what I call my dream schedule has happened. Oh.
And I'm curious, I know this book is focused on the farm, but what's your aesthetic in your New York City apartment?
Oh, that's funny. It's like an octogenarian lives there. It's like Colfax and Fowler did it.
It's so chic. So chic.
I mean, it's like, I need to include a picture of that in the slideshow because
I think it would be great. I would love
because
to see.
It's a big juxtaposition to like how I live here and how I live there. And I live in the same ways. Like there's a little garden in the city, and I garden and I entertain and I have people over, and I am the same Chris Spitzmiller in the city as I am up here. But it's like, dark colors. There's not a lot of light. there's, you know, it's like Colfax and Fowler did it for an 80-year-old is what it's like, you know, and I love that. And I'm very happy with it. And I tinker with it every so often, and then I put it back the way that it was. I bought a big fancy 4-poster bed from Bill Hodgins' estate, and there's no room in the house here to put it. And so I brought it to Manhattan and I put it up, and the color of the bed is primarily sort of celadons, and it looks really good in the room, but it's like so big in there. And Anthony's like, okay, King, whatever. So like the big bed will be moved out, and the old bed that Albert Hadley made for me all these years will be put back in there. So I like play with it, but it ends up, we are doing the chairs in my my dining room, which is also my living room, which when I got the 1-bedroom apartment and I showed it to my mother, who was horrified that there was not a separate dining room. And I'm like, Mom, there'll be a table there in front of the window and I'll eat dinner there. And she's like, there should be a separate dining room for you. Like my mom is, you know, and you know, so anyway, back to the chairs. So I have brown leather chairs that I gave to Ashley, and I'm having some chairs done in some like blue leather, because I purchased a pair of chairs from Kate that were in this sort of like light blue color, and it looked really great in the apartment. And the chairs are no longer there, but I am going to use the blue leather, and so that'll be a nice pop of useful color. And I have a collage that Albert did, is my only sort of like modern thing in there, I think, you know, so.
I thought this was an interesting question. Did the pandemic have any effect on your creativity?
You know, there was a lot of stuff that I was supposed to get done in the pandemic that I didn't get done. Like I was supposed to make more brackets than I did, and I was supposed to do this. And I left the house and I went over to the pottery, and I really tried to keep up with the orders that we had. And I learned what I could do and what I couldn't do, and how important the people who work for me really are. And I was so thankful when I got just even one of them to come back and work with me again. You know, I'm just thankful that we have this place, and that we were able to be up here and could go outside and could play with the geese, and we could, you know, do all the stuff that we do. Like that's the part that really, because before Anthony met me, he lived in a 350 square foot studio apartment in Manhattan. And the apartment, which I'm happy to include in another show, it's a good sized apartment, but to be there all the time would have been a lot. So I'm very happy to have been up here.
Good. So we talked before we got on the air, and you talked about, you have some recipes in the book. I'm curious, can you highlight some of your favorite recipes? And you're not just a gardener, you're definitely a Renaissance man. You've got all sorts of skills. So I'm definitely interested in the food, and so are some of your audience members here.
I wanted there to be a page of recipes for every table setting that I did. And Rizzoli was like, whoa, 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 whoa. He's known for lamps and pretty rooms and gardening. I don't know about his cooking. And, you know, they said, well, we'll allow you 2 recipes for every season, and you have to grow it in order for it to make it in the book. So there's a chocolate chip cookie recipe that's very easy to make. You have to have parchment paper to do it, and you remove the cookies when they're slightly still doughy and undercooked, and let them finish cooking on top of the stove. There's a roast chicken that I'm going to make tonight. That's a recipe that my mom and I worked on, from a variation of something from the Zuni Cafe, where you salt the chicken inside and out after washing it and put it in your refrigerator uncovered for at least a day, if not longer, and let it all dry out. And then you get a pan with a couple of tablespoons of hot oil going, olive oil, and sear the top, and then you sear the bottom, and you put it in a 450-degree oven. And there's something that this salt does to the chicken that makes it absolutely magical, and it's got more flavor than you can ever dream of. And I quarter the chicken into 2 pieces of the breast and 2 pieces of the dark meat, and it's really, really, really a favorite. And there's rhubarb recipes. There's some other recipes that I'm not thinking of in there, but I tried to do easy stuff, because like, well, there's a souffle recipe in there, which is not easy, but it's become one of my staple things. And today I had two friends from Paris who were visiting the farm today, and I made them the cheese souffle, and they liked it so much that they're like growing at the scraps at the pan. And I'm like, there's more over there. So we got a second souffle out, and they ate the second souffle too. And, you know, I mean, it's so nice to be able to do this stuff and to be able to share it with your friends. And if you do a souffle enough time for your spouse or for yourself or forever, then eventually you can learn to make it for friends and eventually know exactly what you need to do and the shortcuts you can take and the things that you can cut out of it. But like you figure it all out, and it all becomes like second nature. So
terrific. Well, I just got a little message from the person behind the scenes, said, if that made you hungry, you can purchase a year at Clove Brook Farm right here at BookHampton. So
yeah.
I'm going to say it before we close that please, this book is amazing. And I think you left us wanting a little more. Like, I wanted the recipes. I want to see what the text is. Before we close, though, I mean, this seems like a natural growth for you to write a book. What would your next one be? What's your next project? You're so prolific. I don't even... What are you going to work on next? What's your next challenge? Because it seems like you really like to
that barn is my next challenge. I've never taken on anything that big, as you can see, so it's going to be a lot. And you know, the thing is Anthony and I are going to get married, and we wanted to get married in September. We figured this year, with everything going on, we put it off until next year when everything's settled out. And so that barn will be like the wedding sort of hall as well too. So it gives another level of pressure to like get that on and to get that done. So that's the next thing. But there will be more books. I think we'll do a book on together. On the other side of the Grange Hall, Anthony has his own garden, which is a vegetable garden. And I think we'll do more on the specifics of gardening. I'd like to do more on like the cooking. I'd like to do more on like the entertaining. You know, I mean, it's nice. I tried to, what influenced me was Bunny Williams' book, An Affair with the House, and Martha's first entertaining book, and they had a little bit of everything in them. And design books are good, but they have a very specific audience. And by doing this, Rizzoli printed 13,000 of them in the first printing. And by the day that it went on sale, 10,000 of the 13 had sold. And so they went into a second printing of 6,000. And there was a period that the Rizzoli people didn't have any books. Like Amazon had them. I know Kate didn't have them. I know Mecox didn't have them for a long time, but now the second printing is in and we're doing more book promotions, so they'll be sold. And the book, I think, has a long life to it. It's not a book that's about today. I mean, it happens to be very timely in that people are spending time at home and people are gardening more and stuff. But I don't see this book being just about now. I see it because it's got the recipes and the different table settings and the different plants that I want people to go pick it back up and to live and to be loved and be held close to their heart.
Oh, wow. That's actually, I couldn't have had a better ending. And that's true. I think the book speaks to all of us and we can take what we want from it. It's stunning, stunning, stunning. And congratulations. I hope there's more printings. Don't forget to buy your copy. You are a pleasure, and thanks for sharing your beautiful home with us.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Okay. Good night to everybody. Don't forget to buy the book.